Hello all, nice to see you here on the GovReports webinar series this afternoon. We're a few minutes out from starting, so we'll just wait a little while, but can I just check that everybody can hear me fine? If someone can throw their hands up, that would be fantastic. Awesome, thanks Susan, thanks Tony, thanks Suzanne, fabulous. Appreciate your help there, guys. I hope everybody had a fabulous, super long weekend and you're not being too punished by the short week that we're having. It always seems like a fabulous idea at the time, and then we end up smishing 5 days work into 4 and getting a bit of a punish for it. At least, you know, that's what happens to me. You guys might all have that completely handled and more power to you. We've got quite a few people on the line today, which is fantastic. And please do feel free to throw any questions into the question boxes for us today. I've got Tiana on the line with me, helping me out, so she'll interrupt me and, you know, flag me down if there are any questions you'd like answered along the way or even before we start. You know what, Tina? With Tiana, we might have to start working on some on-hold music for the start of these webinars instead of the webinar room of silence. What do you think?
Agree.
I won't try to burst into song or anything, guys. I won't torture anyone with that. But it's an idea. So we'll just wait another 60 seconds or so, guys. There's a few people still popping online, which is fantastic to see. I certainly hope that you're all enjoying the GovReports January webinar series and hope that you've been inspired to kick off the new year and maybe get some things done that you have been meaning to for a while, as we do with New Year's aspirations. Okay. Well, we've just clicked over to 4 o'clock, so we'll kick off our webinar today, and the title is Technology Beyond Compliance. And what I'd like you to get out of this today is just some thinking about, you know, how we're using technology and how we can be a little bit blinkered with what we do. And I challenge you to really have a fresh look at the technology that you're using in your own business and, of course, that you're helping your clients manage in their businesses. And so I'd just like to have a bit of a recap of our current digital environment, and certainly compared to 10 years ago, even 5 years ago for some of us, the saturation of different technologies and the development of different softwares and different hardwares has been astounding. And we're living in a daily business environment now that has omni-channel platforms. So platforms that, you know, cover a great many functions with all the same look, feel, brand and touch. So some really iconic omni-channel platforms would be Salesforce is a fantastic example. HubSpot, any single sign-on dashboard where you have a dashboard that signs you into all of your apps in a real-time window. And then, of course, we've got what we're more familiar with in our practices, like our integrated ledger platforms and product suites. Communication technology is just insane now, right? So we've gone past letters, faxes and telephone calls to text, video, emails, audio, animation, screen capture technology that we use to communicate with our teams and with our clients. And we've got, of course, virtual and augmented reality technologies which are making their way into mainstream business as service delivery tools. So, I mean, 10 years ago you wouldn't consider having a chatbot, for example, as a communication tool in your business. And yet chatbots are now pretty much commonplace even for micro businesses and small businesses that we would deal with every day. And then, of course, we've also got touch technology. So we've got smartphones, tablets, wearable smart things, kiosks, smart glass, and, of course, the Internet of Things, which is, you know, a combination of the hardware that we're used to being linked up with the software and infrastructure that we're seeing developed in the world. So sometimes looking at all of this and dealing with business on a day-to-day basis can either be, on one hand, completely overwhelming, oh my God, where do I start? Or we can tend to go and get a little bit narrow because there's so much going on, so much change, so many new things that we just sort of maybe shut the door a little bit in our minds and stick with what we know. I know I'm certainly guilty of that, and I'd be surprised if we're not all a bit guilty of the stick to what you know every now and then. Now, Derek, apologies, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Kate. I missed the whole introduction part of who I am. I'm a BAS agent in practice. My name is Kate Kemp. My business is SBFO, and I'm working with GovReports here just to chat to you as a peer and give you my humble opinion on how we can leverage technology in our business and, of course, how we can use GovReports to actually grow our businesses forward and start to round out our technology offering. So let's jump into what we mean in this context by compliance technology. So, I mean, this is not rocket surgery, is it? It's technology that helps us meet our regulatory and corporate obligations. Compliance technology would be, you know, our general ledgers, anything that produces or communicates our lodgements through to the ATO, any of our corporate governance software and anything that helps us comply with a regulatory obligation. Payroll is a fantastic example of compliance technology. Security and privacy protection softwares such as LastPass would be something that I would consider a compliance technology because that is helping us comply with our obligations. And if you consider us as practicing accountants and BAS agents, our journey over the last 10 years, let's say 10 because, you know, it's a nice round number, has taken us all the way from, you know, calculator and payment records, you know, even old paper ledgers were available 10 years ago. Let's make it 15 years ago, where we would still have stacks of paper and we'd be manually typing things into computers. We probably all remember handwriting the old group certificates, PAYG statement summaries, or burning them even on CDs and posting them into the tax office. That was groundbreaking at the time, you know, the height of technology. And then, of course, we were introduced to cloud accounting with Xero and some others, Banklink, entering the retail space. And then, of course, that took a few years to become mainstream, and now we don't even think twice about that dodgy accounting in the cloud that was very dangerous and would never be legally allowed, and all of the carry on and went with that. And we just keep rolling forward and rolling forward. We took up automated bank feeds. We started getting cloud lodgement technologies. So not only did we get the ATO's BAS and tax agent portals, which were groundbreaking in their way, but then we started to get much more friendly third-party lodgement software that would just push our lodgements through to the ATO without us having to even jump into that very reliable, solid, easy-to-use ATO platform. And then if we push that out further into our current day, we've now got a lot of DIY knowledge transfer via social media. So we've got a growing ecosystem of small businesses that are doing their own accounting and tax, because all of this knowledge is being shared across social media and our communication technology. And of course, we've got sort of digital signatures, and the compliance world is moving very much into an experiential sales product. So what we're aiming for now is not just getting the boring stuff done, getting the BAS done, getting the return done, but making sure that we're getting that return done in a way that's a fantastic experience for our customers, that's easy, simple, transparent, on time and seamless. So where I think we get a bit narrow is that we can tend to think about technology just in terms of compliance. How do we get the BAS done? How do we make sure the GST is reconciled? What's the best general ledger to use and why? But most of our compliance technologies now don't even begin to stop at compliance. In fact, I think you might agree when we really think about the value that we offer our clients, compliance is less and less and less and less of something that we focus on in relation to our value offering. So what solutions are we seeing that actually go beyond compliance? Now, of course, the easiest answer here is our interactive ledgers. They still do the job. They are a general ledger. There's debits on the left, credits on the right. Now they're interactive. So we can have multiple people working in the general ledger at once and actually talking about it without needing to be in the same office or looking at the same piece of paper. Now that's adding value. That's going way beyond compliance and adding efficiency, ease of use, choice of location, collaboration, and a whole lot of other process improvements that are adding value not only to our compliance culture, but our business's bottom line, our business operations and process efficiency. Of course, we've got our general ledger software ecosystem, so let's now move outside of our interactive general ledger and look at all of these purpose-built bits of software that do a specific thing, but then also talk to the general ledger. Now, as BAS agents and accountants, we can rather get focused on the general ledger and making sure it's right and working properly. And sometimes we lose sight of the larger business process. And so we've got this ecosystem of things that do what's not capable, well, what's not achievable in the general ledger. So such as managing HR, managing projects, managing payments and engagements, just to name a few. You'll all know if you've ever looked at any of the app marketplaces for any of our favourite GL software systems, there are hundreds and hundreds of solutions for different business processes out there that all then click together and talk to each other and talk to the general ledger. We've also got transacting software solutions. So these are the sort of software solutions in that ecosystem that transact on our behalf, that actually create the transactions from the records. And when we talk about modern accounting practice, modern business operation, we're not talking about recording what happened later. We're talking about transacting from our record base. So it's flipping it around. And we've got these, what used to be compliance softwares, now actually offering and delivering not only the compliance, but the modern business operating platforms. We've also got omni-channel platforms, as we discussed earlier, things like Salesforce that do everything from your marketing lead funnels all the way through to your project delivery in one, not only an internal user experience that's consistent, but a consistent experience to the end user and customer. And of course, when we got all of these softwares put together, we ended up with so many bits that, do you remember the term app stack that we were using a few years ago? So we ended up having our businesses and our clients' businesses operating with a bit for this and a bit for that and a bit for the other and a software for this and a software for that. And we had to manage this integration. And so what we're seeing now, and what I believe is sustainable into the future, is a rationalisation of technology that's moving back toward having single or integrated databases. Now, I know in my own practice that when we onboard a new client, there are still two sets of data entry to be done for our client information. One is the ATO portal and the other is our practice platform. Now, that's still one too many in my opinion. We just haven't been able to crack that yet. But I do mentor and work with some other practices that have 5 or 6 different points of entry for each new client piece of client information, which means, of course, that's just a bad business process. It's subject to error and it's a little bit more time consuming. So we've got this movement away from lots of little databases back towards single or integrated databases to run our businesses. And that's just to make sure that we don't have bits of data all over the place that are duplicated. But I guess the biggest step forward we've made in going beyond compliance in our software solutions is the removal of manual processing. And when we remove manual processing, we actually not only improve business process, but we reduce errors if we've done it correctly, of course. So one of my favourite examples of this is using Squirrel Street or Receipt Bank to capture expense and GST information, or using a software like GovReports to suck the lodgements out of our general ledgers that have been published and push it through to the ATO. And I say that because, and I hadn't considered it prior to working on one of the ATO advisory boards, and this was about online BAS checks. And there's an incredible amount of BASs that get picked up by the ATO as having errors. And I think it was something along the lines of 67%, I'll have to go and check, but 60% of these errors were caused simply by input error, like getting a bit dyslexic with the old typing or putting the wrong data into the wrong field when manually entering data to the ATO portal. So when we remove manual processing, we're actually supporting compliance by reducing our errors, but we're also, of course, offering business process improvement and efficiency. So that's just some examples of where we've traditionally used compliance software and it's been developed to actually provide not only customer experience but also business process improvement. And of course, the good thing to note is that the ATO is coming on this journey with us. So the ATO is absolutely going here. They've declared it, and they're going digital, and they're going digital at a faster and faster rate. And they're doing it for the same reasons. So the ATO is going digital to improve client experience, as are we. They're there to improve the real-time data transparency, data matching, and data sharing. So, and a fabulous example of that, of course, is STP, which is, I know, being banged on about. But not only does the ATO now know what superannuation you have paid as a business, but they know what superannuation you should have paid. And it is just a few ticks of the clock between now and when they're going to go, hey, you should have paid this, and you did pay that, and there's a shortfall. What's the problem? And of course, we've got the STP data being shared with other agencies, which is, you know, oh my goodness, losing my words, Centrelink, Family Services, so that we've got this exposure, and we have more and more data due to digital technology that shows us patterns of compliance, it's allowing the ATO to know where to look to get a really good and quick bang for their buck, because we've got now increased revenue recovery. And that just means that because of the technology that we're using, we're able to target the people who are owing money. We're able to recover that money quicker. The ATO have many, many algorithms that determine what debt collection funnel or debt collection process that any particular client is put into. And that's all of a result of the technology that they're using being developed out further and further. And of course, we now have with the ATO the acceptance of and reliance on external technology. And back to our STP example, the ATO are not providing a technology solution for STP. Instead, they've gone to market and they are relying on the market to provide the lodgement technology for STP. And your opinion be it what it may, the ATO are not building technology anymore. They're using other people's. They're integrating external technology. And again, just referencing STP, they're not providing technology to facilitate the lodgement of what they've now mandated. So my message to you is that if you're not thinking about technology and you're not staying ahead of the curve and you're not thinking about what's sustainable for your business in terms of lodgement and compliance technology and business technology, then you're actually going to run into trouble and you might get blindsided by something that comes out that you're just not ready to deal with. And I think adapt to change is something that we all have to do, and it's certainly not something that was spoken about 10, 15 years ago. And by adapting to change, what I mean is that change is now the norm. These words, agile, flexible, pivot, fluid, those adjectives are used in front of successful businesses. Have you heard of agile project development? Your business process pivot. These are what we need to do. These are the principles we need to embrace to run successful practices and advise successfully to small business. Now, small business is inherently adaptable. We don't have the overheads. There isn't the legacy of systems and processes that larger organisations and enterprise have. Smaller businesses have less resources and can change direction much more quickly, but we can also get a bit lost in the noise. And as we've demonstrated earlier in this webinar, there is a lot of noise. I certainly spend a lot of my time just looking at solutions, looking at new solutions, seeing if there's been an improvement, seeing what's changed in the current solution. And I don't know about you guys, but I have been caught out time and time again with, they've changed it. Where did it go? The menus have changed. And that's just in the software that we use every day and are, intimately familiar with. So as small business owners, it's our job to understand business processes and then have a look in a really practical and pragmatic sense about looking at the application of technology for that. Because if we don't, we will get lost. And if we can't work it out for us, if we can't get our own ducks in a row, the advice we give our clients might actually not be the best advice. And so I'd like to finish off this slide with saying it's a lot of words. It's a lot of big principles. It's a lot of, dictation, so to speak. But really, when you boil it down to it, data management is the core of compliance and business processing. So if we bring the question back to how do I best manage this data, how do I manage it systematically, and how do we consistently manage data across multiple processes, you have a start to thinking about technology in a way that you can apply it to your business and then, of course, to your clients. And what I'd like to go through now is building compliance into business process. And that's thinking actually about business first, and then what we all like to focus on, of course, is the compliance side of things. So business process is, how do we get the business from A to B? What are we selling? How are we selling it? How does money come in? How does money go out? Then think, when we've got that flowing smoothly, how do we build compliance into the process that supports the business, which is different to what we used to do. What we used to do was have the business running and then manage the compliance later. So again, talking about modern business processing and then fitting the technology to match it. So over on the right on this slide, we've got compliance management. We all know what this is. It's product liability, it's governance, it's GST recs, it's making sure we've got the fundamentals of our financial reporting sorted out. We're lodging on time, we're paying on time. And on the right side, we've got the important business management stuff, which I don't know, most of your clients probably find this far more sexy, right? This is the customer experience, it's product delivery, how are we going to manage our projects, how are we going to look and feel with our brand identity, how are we going to model our business, what do we need to know to be able to make decisions. Now, when you put these two together and look at them holistically, we start to consider the whole of business process. And there's so much technology available now that will actually do both for you, that we really need to consider what's best for the business and provides that compliance underneath. So things to consider, and I think it's a great idea to start with our business first. So what can we consider in our business as tax practitioners, and then sort of push forward onto our clients, or have an understanding that we can apply to our client's business. So my first thing is less really is more. It really is more, except of course when it isn't. So coming back to our conversation about database, if you have one database, so one bucket where you have all of the information that you need in your business, that is better than having two buckets with the same information in it and knowing which bucket to go to when you need to do what, right? And the more you can get all your information into one bucket, the better, except of course when you can't. So we have to be really, really mindful of when it is better to keep everything together and when it's better to separate it. So one example I could come up for you here is I love to do as much as we can in our general ledgers, okay, as a practice principle. However, I will always keep two things separate from my general ledgers. I will keep payroll separate and I will keep lodgement separate. So I keep payroll separate because I think payroll is so specialised that the software that is purposely built only to run payroll is by far superior to anything that exists in a general ledger. Now, we're actually the only the only country that habitually wraps payroll into general ledger software. Most other first world countries have payroll as a completely separate thing. I agree with that principle, and so none of our general ledger software, actually, we don't use the payroll features, with a few exceptions, with maybe the exception of sole directors sometimes. And the other example is lodgements. So we use GovReport and we keep lodgements completely separate to our general ledgers. And that's for a few reasons. It's to separate the work papers out from files that we might lose access to over time. And it's so that we have a consistent lodgement process that offers a consistent customer experience and an internal user experience out to our customers. So when I say less is more, we have the fewest options for different places of data as possible, except when we have a business use case that argues for adding a new database. And of course, with those two pieces of information, those two software platforms I've just mentioned, while we do have duplicate databases, we do our very best to manage those in an integrated environment using tools like Zapier that zap data from one database across to another. So the next thing to consider after you've had to think about where is the data and where is it duplicated is to niche your process to streamline your technology. Now, I had marketers banging at me for years about niching. And probably like a lot of you, I love business. I don't care what business it is. I want to get in there. I want to solve the problems. I want to learn new things. I want to learn new processes. And I think I'm really good at, getting in and learning things and making things work better for business. However, I don't niche, or I didn't niche. And as a result, I had a whole stack of different clients. So we had about 15 different client verticals, and they all had quite unique processes, and they all had quite unique sets of software. So as a practice, and you consider this for yourself and also consider it for your clients when you're advising them, as a practice, I ended up with so many bits of technology to support so many different processes that when I went to scale and grow my business, I got a bit stuck, and the ability for me to manage this in a growth environment was horrendous, so I don't recommend anybody go there. And so all of a sudden I realized that niching is not only about marketing effectively. Niching is actually about effective business process management. So have a think about your business, have a think of the clients that you work best with, that you like the most, that you offer the most value to, and then niche on that process, perfect it, and then look at that technology that you can use that in a sustainable framework that'll push your business into the next 5 to 10 years based on your niche processes. Goes without saying that cloud is king and paper is poor. So when you've looked at your databases and your process niche, get rid of the paper. We have done time and motion studies. You can Google up time and motion studies. Paper costs a stack of money. Manual processing costs a stack of money. So when we go cloud, and I've spoken about this in lots and lots of forums and webinars, so if I'm banging on again, apologise. When you go cloud, cloud gives you choice. Cloud gives you choice of resources, of location, of processing options. And if you're not stuck in the office where that piece of paper is, your business will by default be more sustainable, more scalable, and you'll have a framework that you can take with you anywhere you go. The next thing to consider, which possibly you could argue might be the first thing you consider, is safety first, people. All of us tend to think it will never happen to us. As someone it has happened to, trust me, it can happen to you. Anything from a notifiable breach through to, fraud, through to middleman attack on some banking that you might have access to. Consider safety, particularly when you're looking at retail products. A lot of our clients come to us with, hey, what about this? Look at this, I want to try that, which is all fantastic, but you need to fit your practice technology into a compliant, security and privacy conscious environment. So what we use for that, of course, one of the things we use for that is LastPass. What all of us can use for that straight away is two-factor authentication, which is available on nearly everything. It drives us batshit, but it's there, and it's there for a good reason. So building compliance culture into efficient operation, and that's sort of very much the theme of today's webinar. We want to use technology for experience. We want to run efficient, effective businesses. We want them to deliver a brand identity, but our bread and butter is compliance. So building compliance culture into our business operation is key to this. And that means having a look at how we do business and what we can use in terms of technology to tick off the compliance box as we go. That's front foot operations. It's using Squirrel Street to make sure that the GST of the records that we're automatically pulling into our ledgers for accounts payable is spot on. It means we've got substantiation while we're supporting keyless data entry. Anybody who's still doing manual data entry needs to have a really big think about it in terms of the compliance culture. So manual data entry is, I'm sure you all know, not an efficient business process. except for when it is, okay, going back to our exceptions. But by and large, if you're manually entering anything, you're manually entering details into an ATO portal lodgement. If you're manually entering transactions into a general ledger, not only is it slower, it is also open to risk. We can type things the wrong way, we can get dyslexic, we can make errors. But when we have a compliance culture based on our operations, so that we're using documentation to create ledger entries that create reconciliations and payments, we're already on the front foot. Same with payroll. If we're using a payroll platform that is capturing start and finish times, break times, category tracking, whatever it is that we need, and that's being captured by the employee at the time they're entering their timesheet, as opposed to being caught up with later because we're doing a whole lot of manual entry to get it right. We've built the compliance into the efficient operation. And have a consider, really, we've talked about lots and lots of examples, but transform your business first. So when we're looking at home, it's actually far harder to see the wood for the trees, but we develop and educate ourselves in real life, in real time. Nobody wants to listen to advice from someone who can't do. So have a look at your business and use these tools in your business before you use them for your clients. I've always said, use it in your practice. If you've got software that you want to roll out to your clients, and I believe you should have, going back to niching, you should have software that's very consistent across your client base. Make sure you're using it in your practice too. And when you think of all of these things, think about who is the audience and what is the longevity. So if you're looking at a piece of technology, who's the audience? Who's going to see that technology? Who's going to use it? Who's going to touch it? Who's going to feel it? And what does it make your business look like, or how does it present for your clients' businesses? And will this get your business across the next 5 years? Yes or no? Or, maybe you don't know, but you can actually have a think about it. If you're going to put in a piece of technology today, let's say you want to roll out direct debits as a thing across your practice using the old bank debit platforms, they're not going to be around for another 3 years. So maybe consider, instead of an old debit platform, moving on to a credit card origination platform, something like Practice Ignition, or any of the newer transacting technologies that may be just linked to a Stripe account. So there are some things for us to consider. It's not an exhaustive list, and certainly this is my opinion and not Stritch's, but it should get you going. And what I wanted to run over finally was just some example practice solutions that I use in my practice, and looking at how the software on the left-hand side here covers the compliance obligation, absolutely, but then supports my business and my clients. So in this example, Practice Ignition is what we use to engage our clients once we've gone through our sales process. They get an engagement letter, tick, we have to have that, that's part of our compliance regime, TPB says so, yeah? STP says so, we have to have an engagement letter to lodge STP on behalf of our clients in certain circumstances. So there's my compliance tick. But the reason I picked Practice Ignition is not because of the compliance. We can write up an engagement letter on a piece of paper and get them to sign it. If anyone does that, you're going to have a bit of a conversation with me. But what we get out of Practice Ignition is the branding. We get beautiful pictures and our brochures and our sales documentation going through with our engagement, which means that we've got a better rate of conversion. We're not getting knockbacks on our engagements. They're visually appealing. It supports our sales process. And it's a fabulous experience for our customers. They get an email, they click on a link, and it opens up into a beautiful, easy to read engagement and scope. And they just get to click on it and away we go. And it kicks off all of our workflows. But not only does it help my sales process, it also transacts on my behalf. So Practice Ignition is a transacting engine. It supports our cash flow, meaning we're getting paid up front, not in arrears. it has an integrated database. So while it is another database, it actually feeds the data into our other practice softwares. And of course it's got Zaps with Zapier. So this is creating efficiency for us. So the compliance part, engagement letter, done. But the technology part is the branding, the customer experience, and the efficiency and cost saving that's delivered. LastPass is another piece of software we use. It's for our security and privacy. I have a team of people. They all have access to multiple client logins and nobody knows a password. So the only password that actually myself or any of my team know in our practice is our LastPass password and our G Suite password. And our offshore staff don't even know their G Suite password. So tick, the compliance is the security. I'm comfortable that I am as conscious as I can be of passwords and logins. But the technology, going beyond the compliance, is that I've got a scalable practice. I can onboard someone and they have access to everything just by setting up one profile. My customers get to share logins with me via LastPass, and they have comfort around the fact that they're not emailing passwords around the joint, which is, probably not a really great practice anymore. And it's really simple for them to share operational passwords with us quickly and efficiently. We have efficiency. We've got, reduced client risk. We've got increased processing times because we launch all our apps from a LastPass extension, which means we're not looking for websites. We don't have to manage 100, bookmarks on our browsers. So, and I guess the best thing I like about LastPass is disaster recovery. If we lose everything, and this is also speaking to cloud and one of the powers of cloud, I don't know if you were on the last webinar that I ran here with GovReports, but I had a catastrophic technology failure 2 minutes before the webinar started, and I went to someone else's computer and had my entire practice, including our webinar, up and running within 8 minutes. Now, it wasn't just a webinar. Like, I had to have my entire practice platform open and ready to go in order for me to do that webinar, and that's just amazing disaster recovery. It's certainly something we couldn't have done 10 years ago. So LastPass, ticking my security and privacy compliance requirement, but I've chosen it because it actually offers value to my business and some contingency planning and risk management. And of course, GovReports. So GovReports, it's a reporting platform. It lodges our BAS. Yay! It also lodges our payroll tax, payment summaries, SCP, state government taxes, and TFN decks, stuff. It lodges a whole lot of stuff. Great, fantastic. We've made lodgements, but what it delivers to our business in terms of value is branding. So lodgement receipts and things come from our email addresses. Customer experience, they get a seamless digital signature process with the correct declarations and all of the work papers in one piece of software that we use internally, presented really clearly and easily to our clients. The user experience for us internally is fantastic. We open it up through LastPass, two-factor auth, and away we go. We don't have to do any manual data entry. Everything is sucked in from our general ledgers. It plays with all our general ledgers and everybody in the sandpit, all the colours. It's mitigating our risk, so we use it as risk management because there is keyless data entry. We can't make errors. We can't make input errors there. It supports our privacy and security requirements because clients have to be two-factor authenticated as well. We have encrypted documentation, assurance over the validity of authorizations. And on top of that, we also have historical lodgement records. So if I lose access to a client's general ledger, clients shut down their businesses, they leave you for different reasons occasionally. Let's say we lose access to those client files, we still have our work papers and our historical lodgement records in our practice platform in GovReports. So for me, that's very, very important. I couldn't think of anything worse than having all of my BAS lodgements receipted in a general ledger or in a work papers platform that I no longer had access to for whatever reason. And last but not least, it means we don't have to log into the ATO portal, and the ATO portal being surprisingly not working does not affect our operation. And we're also using GovReports, of course, as an STP solution for the occasional client that does not have a payroll solution or ad hoc project work. So I hope that I haven't rambled on too long or too quickly. I do have a bit of a habit of banging on about these things. So if anybody had any questions about anything I've spoken about today, or about how to think about or look at technology in their practice as a sustainable framework that not only delivers compliance, but the full user and practice experience, please pop your questions in the box. And just to leave you with one thought, experience is everything. Okay, people do business with people. They don't do business with technology. But we can use technology in our businesses to provide a very scalable and efficient experience that looks $1 million, that services our clients' requirements and keeps us safe in that compliance regime as well. So, any questions? Tiana, has anyone got a shout out or anything they want to add or comment or an opinion? Or I wonder if anybody thinks I have a screw loose and would like to try to tighten it for me. You're more than welcome to shout out now.
Surprisingly, we haven't got a question as yet. So we'll wait for a few more seconds to see if anyone has any questions.
Awesome. Either I've been amazing or really boring and everybody's tuned out. It's possible. So guys, if anybody wants to have a chat to me offline, it's kind of a lot of information to digest, and we do hear it over and over. We hear it at all the roadshows. I think what the roadshows and conferences, about to kick off that conference circuit again, I think what the software providers don't tell us is they don't give us an overall view. They don't talk to us about how the whole of business operates, because we're in this environment of lots and lots of different bits and pieces for lots of different things. Sometimes we get sucked into each little funnel without having a look at the whole of business process. So if anyone wants to have a look at their business, what I suggest you do is actually grab a bit of paper, like a big piece of paper and some crayons, and actually draw your whole of business process out, and then start labeling it with the different bits of technology you could use, and have a look at it visually. I find that's really helpful for me on occasion, and I actually do this with all of our new clients as an exercise, and we just break it into 5 pillars. We break it into money in, money out, payroll, compliance, and business intelligence. So when we break it out into those columns and basically have a crayon day and draw pictures, we get a really holistic view of particularly everywhere the data is duplicated. And quite often I'll work with small businesses, you know, or small practices even when I'm doing some mentoring, and we'll find 7, 8, 9 places where the same data is not only duplicated but entered in. So using that new client example, new client comes on board, some businesses enter those details, the name, the contact details, you know, up to 9 or 10 times in different bits of different things. So definitely try a crayon day. Oh, thanks, Darren. That's really appreciate. Darren said I've been well presented. Thank you. It's awesome.
We have a lot of appreciations for you, Kate, and we do have a questions for Mark. Do you have any options to practice ignition for smaller firms?
So not that I'm aware of that in the same vein. Practice ignition starts at a fairly low subscription volume. What I can suggest though is, again, grabbing the crayons, grab a bit of butcher's paper or whatever and draw your onboarding experience. So before we had Practice Ignition, we had a Google document template that we would use that was linked to Google Contacts. So again, people would come through our website, the data would flow through to Gmail, and that would be pre-populated into our just a Google Doc. And then we had that information would also populate into Xero, where we got our payment details kicked off, and then we had another payment platform for direct debits. So this is an example of we took that whole process, so it was Synergy 8 to Google Contacts to Google Docs to Xero to Cloud Banking, which is our platform, and we actually consolidated all of those different technologies into Practice Ignition. So that's what I mean by sort of consolidating the technology with a view to the future, with a view to sustainability. If you never want to grow past 10 or 15 clients or 20 clients, well, that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. So in that case, what technology do you already have that perhaps we can repurpose to provide a practice management experience or a practice experience? Mark, I don't think that was quite what you wanted to hear, but that's what you got. Sorry.
Perhaps I'll, the other cheap options, and like I said, it's already available in GovReports. You can use the engagement process. It's not as thorough as it is with Practice Ignition, but it is something there if in case you don't have anything else.
That is a fantastic point, Tiana. So, Mark, GovReports not only has the signature software, and it's a part of GovReports I don't use because I actually run a larger, very complex practice, which, again, having had a do-over, I might not have done. But GovReports has a really awesome practice management platform in it. So if you were, and in fact, I've mentored some practices that have quite large practices running very efficiently on the GovReports practice management platform. So that's that would be ideal, really, using those principles of actually having everything in one place.
So Mark make another comment. I use other software as well, prefer DocuSign. That's fine. I think we're referring to the engagement process. So engagement letter, engagement process. So with the GovReports Practice Management Office Practice Manager at the moment, you can also use, there is a customizable template, but very soon we will have the your own template that you can upload in the process. Like Kate was saying earlier, just map out your process and perhaps incorporate that into the practice management.
Yeah. So Mark, we also, before GovReports really developed and matured the digital signature process, we used HelloSign, which is very similar to DocuSign. There are a few of them out there. Of course, there is about 20 out there that I could probably think of off the top of my head. We used that before, but again, looking at that practice process, how many different moving parts do we want to have? As few as possible. So we moved our signature process back into GovReports because, it has 95% of the functionality that we got from HelloSign, and it was all in one platform, all in one process. We can have non-BAS documents, so completely random documents can be signed, and you can use it for absolutely everything, which means for us as a practice, we've lost the subscription cost. So I think we were spending about $200 a month on HelloSign. We completely dropped that, so that's now free, and we're still able to get everything in our practice signed in fact, a more secure environment than either DocuSign or HelloSign.
Okay. I think we have another question from Kim. Does GovReport have a template of an engagement letter? We do have a current template that is customizable, Kim, as I mentioned earlier to Mark. And I think we are just about a few weeks away from releasing the feature where you can upload your own engagement letter with your own formats and use that, as an ongoing process for all your other clients. So we'll
Yeah,
make
that's awesome.
as we release these features.
Yeah, and I do encourage everybody to very carefully read their engagement letters and customise them for your practice. You know, your practice is going to have offer different things. It'll have different values. It'll have different language even. So by all means, grab a template from your association or from wherever, but make sure you read it thoroughly. And plus, most templates I've seen always have a few grammar issues or things, you know. Like some of my slides, doesn't happen, but there you go. Thanks, Kim. No problem.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have for today. Do you want to wrap up?
Yep. So, guys, as I said earlier, you know, if you're stuck or you just want to brainstorm something, please reach out, kate@govreports.com.au. Talk is cheap, as they say, and if you have an existing GovReport subscription, then a short mentoring conversation with me is part of that subscription at no charge. And anybody who doesn't have a GovReport subscription, really think you should consider it. As you know, I've been in practice 15 years, and I know since we had GovReports in our practice, it started to get me thinking about how to consolidate sustainable technology frameworks. So please reach out and have a chat to me about how it can work for you and your specific practice requirements. My contact details are on the screen there. And yes, everybody will get a copy of the slides and a recording of this webinar. So have a lovely evening. Reach out if you have any questions or if you think of something in the middle of the night that you want to ask, please do. So good night, everybody. Take care, and I look forward to speaking to all of you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.